Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. This will be part 5 of the Jose and Kitty Menendez professional murder assassination hit of August 20th, 1989, which, as you know, was 33 days after the Rebecca Schaefer professional murder hit in the Melrose district of Hollywood. Rebecca Schaefer was murdered at age 21 on July 18th, 1989. And then it was 33 days later, August 20th, 1989, that Jose and Kitty Menendez were shot 13 to 14 times with shotguns while they watched television in their TV room on their crummy furniture because the house was decorated with very inexpensive, tired furniture, which is consistent with a rental home, a home that you're not really going to have as your primary home. So I want to dispel a number of mendacities that people like Dominic Dunn, who is from Vanity Fair, aka Invisible Hand CIA, and Karen Lamb, again infiltrated into the band Chicago through Robert Lamb, the leader of Chicago, and the Beach Boys through the drummer Dennis Wilson, who Karen Lamb married and divorced twice. Dennis Wilson twice. You know, the fake owner of 14400 Sunset Boulevard, which was the Will Rogers hunting estate lodge. 5 bedrooms, 13 rooms, Olympic-sized swimming pool over in Arnold Schwarzenegger's area of Pacific Palisades near the beach, where a 23-year-old divorcee, Dennis Wilson, would never live when he's doing 142 concert engagements in 1968. He's not going to live in a 5.88 acre property. A couple of things I want you to really wake up and understand, because you're being lied to in so many different ways. You're being lied to with Karen Lamb, who claims that she was in the room with Kitty Menendez when the phone call came in from Jose that said, "Hey, honey, you got your zip code. We're moving to Beverly Hills." Okay, well, you can't really refute Karen Lamb because the only people who would know if that conversation happened were murdered. Because Kitty Menendez can't say if that ever happened because she's dead. And Jose Menendez, who's supposedly on the other line of the phone, he can't deny it or confirm it because he had his head blown off. And there's Karen Lamb, 3 times divorced to 2 men in the entertainment industry, and she's telling you, like you're supposed to believe Karen Lamb, who, by the way, she gets whacked at a young age too, from in Playa del Mar, over there by Marina del Rey, where her ex-husband got whacked in Marina del Rey. Anyway, so Karen's supposed to try to tell you that Kitty was so excited about moving to Beverly Hills. That's complete poppycock. It's a mendacity. It's not true. And let me explain why it's not true. First of all, this home where the Menendez, Jose Enrique Menendez, Cuban exile to Fidel Castro, if you believe that, in 1959. Anyway, if you want to believe that this rags to riches kid, this made man, Jose Menendez, wanted to live in Beverly Hills, which is 0.49 acres, half an acre of land on this beautiful home with a guest house and a swimming pool and a tennis court. It's only half an acre. Now, he'd already bought 14 acres in Hidden Hills, Calabasas in 1987 and put his wife, who has nothing to do because she doesn't work, and Lyle Menendez is attending Princeton University in New Jersey. So all she has is Eric, and he's attending Calabasas High School, and he's busy playing tennis and taking tennis lessons. So Kitty is all by herself alone. So she needs something to do, right? And so Jose, who's busy being integrated into the porn industry that they couldn't really do when he worked at RCA, right? So you have to go work for the subcontractors because all the big studios don't want you to know they're in the porn business, which they are all in the porn business. But they disguise and conceal it in the way that banks conceal that they're in the clandestine services business through using hedge funds, investment funds, charitable foundations, land trusts, any one of a number of fake phony businesses or fake phony charities. They can then launder, aka conceal, their use of money. That's what Hollywood does. That's what banks do. That's what the clandestine services are known for. That's why they use cover names. Everybody has at least two names. Tom Coomer, Jay Sebring, right? I mean, I guess not everybody. Sharon Tate was Sharon Tate. She was always Sharon Tate. She was even Sharon Tate when they referred to her as Mrs. Roman Polanski at the murder trial. That was the only time she was Mrs. Roman Polanski, was at the murder trial. Before the murder trial, she was Sharon Tate. After the murder trial, she was Sharon Tate. So she was always Sharon Tate when she was alive and when she was dead, except for when they wanted you to believe that she was married to Roman and they lived in this romantic love home on a CIA property site known as Bella Drive, which they call Cielo, which is really part of Sunbrook, cul-de-sac. All right. Now, what I want to tell you is nobody in Beverly Hills or Holmby Hills has 14 acres of land like Jose Menendez had in Calabasas, where it's less expensive up there, but it's still expensive. It's less expensive than Beverly Hills. Walt Disney, who had the largest mansion in Beverly Hills, Walt Disney's mansion was 35,000 square feet. He had a tennis court. He had a huge swimming pool. He had a railroad. He had a railroad maintenance barn. He had a railroad engine named after his older brother, Roy, who made it all happen. And he's living in Holmby Hills, technically Benedict Canyon, Holmby Hills. And he has 5 acres. Walt Disney has 5 acres. Then you have Hugh Hefner. He's living in the Playboy Mansion, which was purchased in 1974. Because previously, if you remember, Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion was in Chicago. Yeah, Chicago, Illinois, the hub, where Jose Menendez had a intermodal transportation business that he was the CEO of. And before that, he was the controller. In Cicero, Chicago, well, Hugh Hefner was working there when Jose Menendez was working there. Hugh Hefner was in Chicago when Jose Menendez was in Chicago. And when Barbie Benton, playmate, persuaded her much older boyfriend, divorced Hugh Hefner, to move to Beverly Hills, he moved to Holmby Hills, and he got 5 acres of land where the Playboy Mansion was. 5 acres. Walt Disney in Holmby Hills, on the other side of Sunset Boulevard from Hugh Hefner, 5 acres. Right? Art Linkletter had a real large home up the hill near the top of Bel Air Road. Not at the tippy top, but close up there. Right across from the Sharon Tate murder scene. Right across. A little bit higher up the hill, but not much farther longitudinally from the Sharon Tate. He didn't have 5 acres. I think he had about a half an acre. Now, he's living on a steep ridgeline, so you can't really do much with that property except maybe excavate. All right, so the property that Jose Menendez moved into temporarily while their Calabasas home was being remodeled was 0.49 acres. That's the home that they were killed with the really crummy, cheap furniture in it. Right. Because they had made no formal commitment to that zip code in Beverly Hills, 90210. Because Kitty was working on the teardown remodel of the Hidden Hills Calabasas home for almost 2 years. It was a 2-year project, and it ran long. And it's August 1989, right? It's not completed yet. And it's 14 acres. They had to move the swimming pool 3 feet. They had to add 3,000 square feet to make the thing 9,000 plus square feet. Kitty's in charge, but Kitty's also driving up to Westlake Village to see her psychologist, Les Summerfield, in Westlake Village, which is in close proximity. It's near Woodland Hills. Anyway, so what I want to tell you is all the energy for Kitty Menendez was put into Calabasas, Hidden Hills, remodeling a 9,000 square foot home, A 6,000 to 9,000 square foot home, 14 acres. Okay, so that's 3 times the Playboy Mansion. That's 3 times the Walt Disney Mansion in terms of property. Very private, very lonely, very boring if you're a teenager like Eric Menendez, who would have been 15 and 16 and years old when he was living in another rental house that they had in Calabasas, because that's where Jose Menendez was working. He was working in Canoga Park, which is the porn capital of the world, and that's where Jose Menendez was spending most of his time, was in Canoga Park, and he was working in a cantankerous relationship with Noel Bloom, whose father was in the pornography business. His father, there was no VHS, there was no VCR business in the 50s, right? So everything was in magazines and in those little dirty theaters. That was the business that Noel Bloom's father, Bernie Bloom brought his son Noel Bloom was brought into the pornography business by his father, Bernie Bloom. And Bernie Bloom, they lived in Calabasas. Right, that's right. Where Jose Menendez bought 14 acres of land in Calabasas. And it's reason that they live in Calabasas, people, is it's like 12 minutes from Canoga Park, which is, by the way, where Charlie Manson lived for 9 months. Charlie wasn't in the porn business, but he lived in the porn capital of the world in the 1960s, which is when the VCRs started to come out, in the 1970s and 80s, and that is when Jose Menendez got into the porn business. In 1987, Jose Menendez was indoctrinated into the porn industry. I believe he had porn connections previous to that when he worked at RCA, as a chief operating officer. He had to know the porn studio executives because guess what? They all worked at Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures and Disney Studios and MGM and Sony and Viacom and Universal. The studios that work there go on to become porn studio executives in San Fernando Valley and Van Nuys, Chatworth, Canoga Park, Calabasas, Sherman Oaks. But most of the offices for porn are in Canoga Park and Van Nuys. And that is where Jose Menendez had offices, in Van Nuys, in Canoga Park, in Woodland Hills. And Woodland Hills is a place where Carolco, which had a CEO named Peter Hoffman, who was working as a parallel executive along with Jose Menendez, who was put in charge of live entertainment, which that was a way for Carolco Pictures to insulate itself from porn, because you put the porn from Noel Bloom and you roll that up into live entertainment, which owns child entertainment also. Monterey Home Video, IVE, International Video Entertainment. They had a series of non-porn VHS producing content that was rolled into live entertainment to create the illusion that they're a family-oriented channel, when most of the money coming in is coming in from Caballero Home Video, which is Canoga Park, which is Noel Bloom's baby, hatched from his father, Bernard. But when the VCRs came out, Noel Bloom jumped on that, and that is where the big bucks came in, and that's the golden goose, and that's what provided the consistent money for Carolco, which we're talking about. When we talk about Carolco, you're talking about Mario Casar and Andrew Vajka, right? Who that's not Andrew's real name, right? It's Andres Weidman, Jewish, from Istanbul, Turkey. And Mario Casar is from Beirut, Lebanon. And they're running a porn business. But they want you to think they're working with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Douglas and Sylvester Stallone, who's a porn star from New York. Sylvester Stallone did a porn film in New York, right, in Hell's Kitchen, before he moved out to Hollywood way, before his association with Noel Bloom and Mario Casar and Andres Weidman. And Sylvester Stallone sat on the board of directors for Calico, as did Jose Menendez, right? And Jose Menendez is the CEO and chairman of the board of Live Entertainment, to create the illusion that that's a separate company, which it is, but it isn't, because it's owned by Mario Kassar and Andrew Vajka, who have partnered with Noel Bloom, the purveyor of porn, and he has the most consistent profit of everything. Because just because Carolco Pictures worked with, Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Basic Instinct with Michael Douglas, and the 3 Rambo films with Sylvester Stallone, 1, 2, and 3, First Blood, 2nd, and 3rd, that kind of conjures up the idea that Carolco Pictures is making huge money with these blockbuster Hollywood films, but they're not. They're not, because that's Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures making most of the dough. And they cut Carolco Pictures in as executive producer status. But the executive producer, like Francis Ford Coppola was, or like Oliver Stone was, or is, or maybe is, with his Ukrainian documentaries, they're not running the show. Oliver Stone is not in charge of his content at all. He was in charge of JFK. He's not in charge of Ukrainian videos. He's not in charge. The company that makes most of the money in charge. And the company that makes the most money is the distributor, the channel market for your content. They get the biggest share, which is probably a minimum of 50%. Minimum 50%. In some cases, I'm sure they get more than 50%. But in the porn business, I'll bet they get 50%. Because your porn isn't going to be seen or shown unless you go through the big studios. But they don't want you to know that, so they create these little companies, a few miles away in Van Nuys, in Canoga Park, in Chatworth. Those are the 3 places that the porn studios are in: Chatworth, Canoga Park, and Van Nuys. And they're all in close proximity to where Charlie Manson was, framed at the Spawn Ranch, where he never lived, because he lived in Canoga Park. Charlie Manson lived in Canoga Park. And the Manson girls lived in Van Nuys, which they call Sherman Oaks, but it was really Van Nuys because they lived near the Sepulveda Recreational Facility Park, which is on Chandler Boulevard, which is in Van Nuys. So I don't know why they keep calling 13158 Chandler Boulevard Sherman Oaks, because I'm here to tell you it's Van Nuys, and it's a porn area. And it's 3.5 miles from the CBS television studios where Art Linkletter led Child's Entertainment. Right? It's where Buddy Ebsen worked. It's where Angela Lansbury had some business. I mean, they worked at the other studios also. They worked at the other studios a little bit, further towards Studio City. But what I want to tell you is that this mendacity that the Jose Menendez boys were spoiled brats who grew up in Beverly Hills, that's completely false. Eric Menendez spent the last 2 years in high school going to Calabasas High School, which is 18 miles northwest of Beverly Hills. And he's playing tennis in Calabasas. And he's very busy. They keep him busy doing the tennis and some swimming. And Lyle is not in Beverly Hills. He's in Princeton, New Jersey, trying to figure out how to graduate from Princeton while he's plagiarizing his papers in Psychology 101 in New Jersey, Princeton. Right? So Kitty is spending her time, she's splitting her time between the rental home in Calabasas, working on the 14-acre ranch that they're trying to rebuild into a 9,000 square foot dream home in Hidden Hills. And then she's driving up every week to Westlake Village to see her psychologist, Les Summerfield. So Kitty is busy seeing a psychologist and working with the contractors in Hidden Hills, Calabasas. And her son is at Calabasas High School, Eric, and he's going to tennis classes. So Kitty's all alone, drinking and taking some whatever medication her psychologist might be recommending, but can't prescribe because he's not a doctor. He's a psychologist PhD. So you have this issue of people taking drugs and people getting drugs from people that are not medical prescribing doctors. And that's going on with Kitty Menendez, whilst Jose Menendez goes into Woodland Hills, one of their offices of Carolco Pictures, who had 550 employees, and he fires 383 employees to drop the enrollment down to 167. So there's 383 people who lost their jobs very quickly after Jose Menendez was hired in 1987 to work for Carolco Pictures Studios, which is an amalgamation of a number of different production companies. And that's the first thing that Jose Menendez does, is he gets rid of 2/3 of the people that work for Carolco Pictures. So this does not endear himself to morale of, if you're an employee of Carolco Pictures, you're thinking Jose Menendez, who can be really scary, that maybe he's going to fire you next. So if you're looking for motivations to murder Jose Menendez, you've got 383 people who lost their jobs just within 18 months of him getting murdered. You also have Mario Casar and Andrew Vodka, not his real name, who lives in Holmby Hills, by the way, near Hugh Hefner. They have $15 million of Keyman life insurance on Jose Menendez. So they have $15 million of tax-free, income tax-free motive to see Jose Menendez go bye-bye. It's $15 million. And then you have Noel Bloom, who's in a purchase-sale agreement with Mario Casar and Andrew Vodka for buying his porn business, Caballero Home Video, which is the golden goose, because they have a higher cash flow from that than they do from Warner Brothers, working on pictures with them, or Columbia Pictures working with Oliver Stone to get his Doors picture put together. Oliver Stone needed Warner Brothers to get JFK to be distributed, and Oliver Stone needed CBS Pictures to get Jim Morrison's Doors distributed. And guess what? Mario Casar and Andrew Vodka work with those studios too. And they work with Michael Douglas, and they work with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they work with Sylvester Stallone. So you think they don't know who Oliver Stone is? Of course they know who Oliver Stone is. They're working on one of his pictures, The Doors, through Columbia, CBS, Evil Eye, Masonic Eye. Am I getting through to you? Do you now understand how Oliver Stone would take a Sunday afternoon off to drive over to the Sharon Tate murder scene so he can give a get well card to Timothy Leary, a lifetime CIA, LSD, mind control psychology professor from Harvard University, that he is living on the crime scene, the murder scene for Sharon Tate. He's living at 10106 Sunbrook Drive. It's right down the ice plant, people. Why would Oliver Stone do that? Well, because he's in the cult. The cult that I said in my previous video. There's a cult, and you have to go through oaths of obedience if you want to stay in that cult, and you want to have your content disseminated. So if you want your JFK film disseminated, if you want your Ukrainian film disseminated, if you want your Putin interview disseminated, you got to go see Timothy Leary before he dies. You got to do what you're told. People, we follow orders or people die. That's what Jack Nicholson said. He's in the cult too, right? Wasn't he a friend of Roman Polanski? Didn't he allow Roman Polanski to rape a 13-year-old girl in his Mulholland Drive, jacuzzi? Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. It's the cult. Roman Polanski was in the cult. Sharon Tate was in the cult. Oliver Stone's in the cult. Jack Nicholson's in the cult. Terry Semmel's in the cult of Warner Brothers. His name is on the UCLA Neuroscience Center. They're in the cult. Holmby Hills. Hugh Hefner, he was in the cult. Walt Disney's in the cult. Roy Disney's in the cult of Toluca Lake. Walt Disney of Holmby Hills, he's in the cult. Jose Menendez had to become a member of the cult. You can't work in the porn industry, and you can't work for RCA Records unless you're in the cult. And he was at Hertz Rent-A-Car before that, and he was in Lions Container Storage, intermodal transportation before that. That's a kind of a cult. That's a banking cult. That's a financial modeling leveraged business. Intermodal transportation. It's the same model for Hertz Rent-A-Car. It's the same model of the studio that makes porn possible, that makes Rambo possible, that makes Total Recall and the Terminator possible, that makes JFK possible, that makes The Doors possible, that makes Born on the 4th of July possible, that makes Platoon possible. Do you understand? That makes Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, where Part 3 is where Michael Corleone is indoctrinated into the Knights of Malta. Well, guess what? Lino LaBianca was indoctrinated into the Knights of Columbus. And his brother-in-law, Peter DeSantis, I said Peter DeSantis, he was an owner in the money laundering chain of Gateway Markets. And he was the managing director of the Knights of Columbus for the western region of the United States, which includes Hawaii, up to Alaska, Seattle, to Denver, down to Los Angeles. So that's a high-paying job. Knights of the Columbus, who's in the money laundering business with Lino, who's managing 6 markets. They had 11. They sold 4. They still had 6 at the time of Lino LaBianca's 10 bayonet strikes to his chest by Operation Gladio soldiers. I'm telling you, people, that they were in a cult. And the cult does not have a sense of humor. They expect you to follow your oath of secrecy, which Abigail Folger was violating by chitty-chatting with her psychologist, Marvin Flicker. You're not supposed to tell your psychologist stuff. And Eric Menendez, he's chatting away with Jerome Oziel. And then they made all these tapes. I don't know who made the tapes. It's very unconfusing who made the tapes or whether someone had a gun to their head when the tapes were made. And Jerome Oziel never turned those tapes over to the police. His wackadoodle girlfriend's the one that talked about that. Girlfriend / patient. Judea Smith. Anyway, what I'm telling you is when there's psychologists involved, they're part of the command and control structure and they tempt you. And if you break your oath of secrecy, then you get in trouble. And if you break your oath of obedience and your oath of secrecy, like Abigail Folger was, you get whacked. She got whacked. Lino LaBianca, he got whacked. He was quitting. He was moving to San Diego. He was going to be involved with breeding horses and racing horses, which he already was involved with. He already owned 11 horses. At the time of his death, Lino LaBianca owned 9 horses. He had 6 grocery stores, 9 horses, and I'm sure he wanted to have more horses. So he's going the wrong direction for a money laundering private banker for drug distribution with motorcycle groups called the Straight Satans in Venice Beach, where Arnold Schwarzenegger took steroids to become a beauty pageant queen. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who then went on to work with Jose Menendez. Arnold Schwarzenegger worked with Mario Casar and Andrew Vodka. Yeah, who knew Noel Bloom, who's paying the bills, who's really paying Jose Menendez's $500,000 base salary plus his $850,000 bonus. That's really coming from Noel Bloom, who sues Mario Casar and sues Carolco Pictures and sues Andrew Kozka and wins a $500,000 judgment before Jose Menendez was murdered. And the court ordered Carolco Pictures to pay Noel Bloom his $500,000, which they didn't have it. But when you see when Jose Menendez gets whacked, they got $15 million. So they can settle up with Noel Bloom. Not to mention that they also owe Noel Bloom money, I'm sure, on his purchase of Caballero Home video porn. So they owe money to Noel Bloom for buying his business. They owe him money because Jose did some dirty tricks which suffocated out some of Noel Bloom's revenue streams with his other companies, which, by the way, all got rolled into Lionsgate in Santa Monica. Lionsgate. If you ever heard of Lionsgate, that's who owns most of Noel Bloom's businesses, which dominantly are porn. It switched from Carolco, which went bankrupt, and that Peter Hoffman CEO, he waltzed on over to Paramount Pictures to get an executive position at Paramount Pictures. So he bailed out like 1995, 96, 5 years after Jose Menendez gets murdered. the president of Calico goes over to Paramount Pictures, which was where Roman Polanski had his big breaks, where Francis Ford Coppola was director of The Godfather 1 and 2 at Paramount Pictures. Francis Ford Coppola. So Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Oliver Stone, Steven Spielberg. It's the same club. It's the same cult. But I want to just disabuse you from the notion that Eric Menendez and Lyle Menendez were students at Beverly Hills High School. It's generally not true. It's possible that Eric Menendez spent some of his senior year at Beverly High School, but he wouldn't have known anyone there unless they played tennis. Because the only thing Eric Menendez did at age 15, 16, 17, and 18 was play tennis and go to Calabasas High School, which, as I told you, is 18 miles northwest of Beverly Hills. And it doesn't make sense that Jose Menendez would want to live in Beverly Hills. It's a longer commute to Canoga Park or to Van Nuys. He's adding 15 minutes minimum to his drive because of the stop lights that are between the San Diego Freeway, which is the main route that he would take. And to get to the San Diego Freeway, there's quite a number of stop signals. And driving up Benedict Canyon, up and over, or to Beverly Glen Boulevard, that is very windy and tedious, and that would be a slow drive, and there's traffic on that road during commute hours. So it would be easier probably to use the San Diego Freeway. And like I said, that's going to take 15 to 20 minutes longer than where he was already living in Calabasas in a rental house whilst they wait for their Hidden Hills Calabasas ranch to be completed. So I know there's a reason that Jose Menendez was lured to Beverly Hills, where Michael Jackson lived in that house, where Elton John lived in that house, because that's a murder house. That's like Cielo Drive. In other words, that home is used for surveillance. It's a surveillance house. That's how you can commit a murder there, because I'll bet they've got cameras all over the place. I mean, Michael Jackson, the King of Pop, is living there, and Elton John is living there, and then the King of Colombo, William Link, the executive producer of Columbo and the #1 scriptwriter, William Link, he has to move into the home after the bloody murders. I mean, they had an interim rental to a Saudi prince, I believe, but very quickly, by 1992, just 2 years after the murder, you had the King of Colombo television series, my favorite. William Link is now implicated with 722 North Elm Drive. So you see, it's just like Cielo. It's just like the Natalie Wood, Cass Elliott home, 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive, off Woodrow Wilson Drive, 10050 Cielo Drive, off Cielo Drive, which is Bella, but we call it Cielo. But it's really on Sunbrook, but we call it Cielo, so that you can't find it. Oliver Stone found it. Oliver Stone knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so does Sean Stone, who likes to play dumb on this stuff. Sean Stone's really into his cult rituals, but for some reason he doesn't understand his father's in a cult ritual. Or maybe he does understand, and he just likes to play like he doesn't understand. Because I have a feeling that they all know, and it's just you and I that are being punked here with MK Ultra, Sidney Gottlieb's program, hatched at Caltech, Pasadena, Skunkworks, Lockheed, Burbank, home to Warner Brothers, Disney Studios, Sony Pictures, MGM, Paramount, and porn. Thanks for listening. I hope you understand that there were at least, there's Noel Bloom has a motive to kill Jose Menendez and collect his $500,000, and Mario Casar has $15 million of motivation to kill Jose Menendez, and Andrew Vodka has $15 million of motivation tax-free to kill Jose Menendez, and then 383 people that Jose Menendez personally fired, they have a reason to see Jose Menendez as, I don't believe they did it. And I also don't believe any of the people I just mentioned did it either. I think that the people who employ Mario Casar and employ Noel Bloom in the porn industry and employ Andrew Vodka. Their employers are the ones who put out a contract for Jose Menendez. Excuse me if I say Canseco. It's another guy that I happen to know and have spent some time with, Jose Canseco. By the way, a really nice guy. He's the most ethical person in baseball. And whereas Tony La Russa would be like at the bottom of the ethics. Like Tony La Russa could be a defense lawyer. That's how unethical he is, right? Remember, he propped up Mark McGuire, who was clean, and then he ratted out the whistleblower, Jose Canseco, who's dirty. And the reality is Jose Canseco is cleaner than Tony La Russa, who's the dirtiest of all, along with who's the director of baseball now? Robert Mandrake or something? Manfield, whatever his name is. He's a lawyer with no baseball experience, and he's the commissioner of baseball, and he was trying to cover up the whole steroid thing, which, by the way, it's completely going on today, much to the chagrin of Robert Maynard. Complete fraud. They're all frauds, okay? Entertainment business is about deception and fraud. It's about the magic castle, which is why so many women seem to get murdered in close proximity to the magic castle. And it's where Chris Rock had to endure a fake bitch slap from Will Smith at the Dolby Theater, which is where the Church of Scientology Visitor Center is located. All right, so whether it's Rebecca Schaefer or Jose Menendez, or whether it's Ashley Ellerin or Ashton Kutcher, who had a date with her that night that she was murdered with bayonets, or whether it's Sharon Tate or Abigail Folger, they're all in a cult. And I'm here to tell you that I don't think Eric Menendez and Lyle Menendez were really in the cult. I think they're scapegoats in the way that Charlie Manson is a scapegoat. Because once you come up with a preposterous story about the children murdering their parents in a horrific way, that completely restructures your brain. If I told you that Charlie Manson never went to the crime scenes to commit the crimes, you won't even believe me. You just think that he did it, when he didn't do it. And neither did Charles Watson. And certainly Susan Atkins didn't do it. And certainly Patricia Krenwinkel didn't do it. And certainly Leslie Van Houten didn't do it. But that's what people think, because they've been punked. And that's what Hollywood's all about. It's about mocking you and pretending, that we're going to put these virtue signalers up there that you're going to believe in. The only person that's going to take care of your understanding of reality is you. And hopefully you're getting that message to this channel. I am not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to tell you how to think. To understand that money laundering is the concealment of the source and use of money. So you can't follow the money, as Sean Stone likes to say. Sean Stone likes to say, oh, you got to follow the money. Hey, Sean, guess what? I told you a million times, you can't follow the money. You can follow the bankers. You can follow the Hollywood studio executives. You can follow the executive directors like your father. Why don't you follow your father around? That'll answer a lot of your questions. Wherever Oliver Stone is going, that's where the money laundering is going. Money laundering and producing films go hand in hand. Murder and assassination go with money laundering. You can't expect persons to go over to a home and shotgun two people to death for free. You're going to have to pay them. And you may have to whack them after the murder, like we learned in The Godfather, right? You whack the whackers. That way you have what's called need-to-know basis, and you have no leaks in your superstructure of security clearance need to know. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Remember, it's Hidden Hills, Calabasas is where the Menendez family was going to live, except they really never moved in because the house never got finished before Jose and Kitty Menendez were whacked. And then because the house was creepy, Lyle and Eric moved to Marina Del Rey, to the Marina Club Towers, to the penthouse, and they lived there for a few months until they were arrested after the wackadoodle psychologist's wackadoodle girlfriend ratted them out. That was almost 6 months after their parents were murdered. And then Dominic Dunn will have you believe that the Menendez were running up $600,000 worth of purchases because their parents died. Well, first of all, their parents probably only had $2 million after taxes and or less. And then all they had was a $400,000 life insurance, which they divided equally. So Lyle got 200 grand and Eric got 200 grand. That's a lot less money than Mario Kassar got and Andrew Vajka got. They got 15 million. What is a bigger number, 15 million or 400,000? The kids just got 400,000. The rest was all tied up in these real estate projects and the remodel, which is illiquid, so there's no cash. So the only money that the Menendez boys would have had was from the life insurance. They probably had to wait a month and a half minimum to get that, And then once they were implicated, I'll bet there was a lawsuit to try to bring that money back after. It took 6 years to get them convicted, but I'll bet there was a lawsuit to try to reclaim the death benefit. But you see, that completely gets Carolco Pictures and Live Entertainment and Noel Bloom and Mario Kassar and Andrew Vajka. That gets them totally off the hook. They're got to be happy that the Menendez boys got convicted, because that means that they won't. And I'm not implicating them. I'm saying they had a huge financial motivation. They had a $15 to $20 million motivation to see Jose Menendez go away. Okay, so that's motive. Now, I'm not saying they did it. It was professional. They didn't leave the cartridges, so we know it's a professional hit. But who ordered it? Well, I'm going to say it was probably whoever controls the porn industry and the big studios, that they did it. The usual people. The same people that would have approved the Sharon Tate murder would have been the same, Star Chamber that would have killed Jose Menendez. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Hit that like button. Take care.